3 days had passed since the first council session. Taman spent his mornings meeting with different alien delegates, trying to build friendships for humanity. Most of these meetings did not go well. The aliens treated him like a curious child rather than a real diplomat. Jiwoo followed him everywhere, carrying his bags and papers. She continued to drop things and bump into walls. During one meeting with the crystal beings called the Zephlon, she accidentally knocked over a water pitcher. The crystal delegate named Zephlon Prime had to move quickly to avoid getting wet. "I am so sorry," Jiwoo said, rushing to clean up the mess. "I am such a clumsy person. Please forgive me." Zephlon Prime watched her with interest rather than anger. "Do not worry, human. Accidents happen to everyone." This was the first time any alien had shown kindness to Jiwoo. Most of them just ignored her or made jokes about human clumsiness. Taman felt grateful for this small bit of friendship. "Thank you for understanding," Taman said. "My assistant tries very hard, but she gets nervous around new people." "I can see that," Zephlon Prime replied. "But she seems loyal to you. That is a valuable quality." As Jiwoo cleaned up the spilled water, she was actually studying the crystal being's body structure. She wondered how hard it would be to shatter crystal bones and whether their nervous system was similar to other species she had killed before. Her mind automatically cataloged weak points while her face showed only embarrassment. That afternoon, Taman was invited to a special dinner with several important delegates. The invitation surprised him. Most aliens had been avoiding social events with humans. "This could be our chance," he told Jiwoo as they prepared for the evening. "If we can make friends at dinner, maybe they will listen to us during the formal sessions." Jiwoo nodded while adjusting her thick glasses. "Should I bring my note-taking materials, Ambassador?" "Yes, but please try not to drop anything tonight. This dinner is very important." "I will be extra careful," Jiwoo promised. The dinner was held in a large hall with tables arranged in a circle. Each table seated delegates from different species. Taman and Jiwoo were placed at a table near the edge of the room, far from the most important guests. Their table companions included Admiral Thex, the warlike alien who had spoken against humanity before. There was also a tall, thin being covered in purple fur, and two small creatures that looked like walking mushrooms. "So," Admiral Thex said as they began eating, "tell us about human military capabilities. How many warships do you have?" Taman hesitated. This was exactly the kind of topic he wanted to avoid. "Humanity prefers to focus on peaceful exploration rather than military expansion," he said carefully. Thex laughed loudly. "Peaceful exploration? How naive. The galaxy is a dangerous place, human. Species that cannot defend themselves do not last long." "We believe that cooperation is stronger than conflict," Taman replied. "And what do you think, little assistant?" Thex asked, turning to Jiwoo. "Do you agree with your ambassador's peaceful philosophy?" Jiwoo looked up from her plate with wide, frightened eyes. "I do not know much about military things," she said softly. "I just help with paperwork and carrying bags." The purple-furred alien made a sound like purring. "How refreshing. An honest admission of ignorance instead of pretending to be important." As the dinner continued, the conversation turned to recent conflicts in nearby star systems. The aliens discussed battles and conquests as casually as humans might talk about the weather. They spoke of entire planets being enslaved or destroyed without any emotion. Taman tried to steer the conversation toward trade agreements and cultural exchange, but the aliens seemed more interested in military strength and territorial expansion. "Your species will need to choose sides soon," Thex told him. "The galaxy is dividing into factions. The strong will survive and the weak will serve. What if we choose neither side?" Taman asked. "What if we remain neutral?" Thex's eyes gleamed with amusement. "Neutrality is a luxury only powerful species can afford. Weak species like yours must find protectors or be conquered." During this conversation, Jiwoo appeared to be struggling with her dinner. She kept dropping her utensils and having trouble cutting her food. The other aliens barely noticed her, but she was listening to every word while memorizing the layout of the dining hall. She counted 12 exits, noted the positions of all security cameras, and identified which aliens were carrying concealed weapons. She also noticed something troubling. Several of Thex's companions were whispering among themselves and looking at devices hidden under the table. After dinner, the delegates moved to a lounge area for drinks and more conversation. Taman found himself surrounded by a group of aliens who seemed friendly. but asked many questions about Earth's defenses and technology. "How many colonies do humans have?" asked one. "What is your population size?" asked another. "Are your manufacturing capabilities significant?" asked a third. Tamian answered as honestly as he could, but he began to feel uncomfortable. These felt more like intelligence gathering than friendly conversation. Meanwhile, Jiwoo sat in a corner chair, apparently trying to organize her scattered papers. Several aliens walked past her, making comments about human incompetence. She pretended not to hear them. But her trained ears caught fragments of other conversations happening around the room. Two insect-like beings were discussing ship movements near the station. A group of crystal creatures talked about contingency plans and asset positioning. Most concerning of all, she overheard Admiral Thex speaking quietly with his aide about timeline acceleration and optimal strike windows. None of this sounded like normal diplomatic talk to Jiwoo. Her instincts, honed by years of special operations training, told her something was wrong. But she maintained her nervous, bumbling act while filing away every detail for later analysis. Near the end of the evening, a new human arrived at the gathering. She was introduced as Yoon Da-un, a cultural attaché who had just arrived from Earth. Da-un was tall and elegant, with confident movements and an easy smile. "I apologize for being late," Da-un said as she joined their group. "My shuttle was delayed by some kind of military exercise in the outer system." Taemin was delighted to see another human. "Da-un, this is wonderful. Let me introduce you to everyone." As introductions were made, Jiwoo watched Da-un carefully. The new arrival moved with a grace that seemed almost too perfect. Her eyes swept the room in a pattern that reminded Jiwoo of her own surveillance techniques. When Da-un shook hands with the aliens, her grip lasted just a fraction of a second longer than necessary, as if she was testing their strength and reaction speed. "What kind of cultural work do you do?" asked Zephlon Prime politely. "I study how different species interact and communicate," Da-un replied smoothly. "I am particularly interested in conflict resolution and peaceful cooperation." Admiral Thex snorted with derision. "More human peace talk. Do all your kind think the galaxy runs on good intentions?" "Not all," Da-un said with a slight smile. "Some of us understand that peace must sometimes be actively maintained." There was something in her tone that made Jiwoo look up sharply. For just a moment, their eyes met across the room. Da-un's expression was perfectly pleasant, but Jiwoo caught a flicker of something else underneath. Recognition, perhaps, or acknowledgement. The evening ended with polite farewells and promises to continue conversations during the next day's sessions. As the aliens departed, many of them made jokes about the helpless humans who would probably need protection in the dangerous galaxy. Back in their quarters, Taemin felt frustrated and discouraged. "I do not think tonight went very well," he told Jiwoo. "They still see us as weak and naive." "Maybe that is not entirely bad," Jiwoo said quietly. Taemin looked at her in surprise. "What do you mean?" "Nothing, Ambassador. I just meant that if they think we are harmless, they might be more willing to trust us." "Perhaps you are right," Taemin said, though he still looked troubled. "I just hope we can prove our worth before they lose interest in us completely." As Taemin prepared for bed, Jiwoo sat at the small desk in their shared quarters. She pulled out her communication device and began composing a coded message to Earth. To anyone watching, it would look like a routine report about the day's diplomatic activities. In reality, she was reporting suspicious behavior, unusual ship movements, and a growing sense that something dangerous was being planned. Her message contained detailed threat assessments and recommendations for increased security protocols. She also made a note about Da-un. The new arrival was definitely not what she appeared to be, which meant Earth had sent more than one covert operative to protect their diplomatic mission. That was both reassuring and concerning. If Earth Command thought the situation required multiple hidden guards, the threat level might be higher than anyone had told Taemin. 3 floors below their quarters, Da-un was sending her own encrypted report. Her message contained similar concerns about alien military movements and suspicious behavior among certain delegates. She had also identified Jiwoo as a fellow operative, though she had not yet made contact. Both women had noticed the same troubling signs during the evening's gathering. Admiral Thex and his faction were planning something, and the timing seemed to coincide with humanity's first formal council session. The shuttle moved slowly through space toward the massive station. Lee Taman pressed his face against the window and stared at the huge structure. The Galactic Council Station was bigger than any city he had ever seen. Thousands of lights blinked across its surface like stars. Ships from dozens of different worlds flew around it like insects around a bright lamp. Amazing, Taman whispered. He had dreamed of this moment his whole life. Humanity was finally being accepted into the Galactic Council. After years of being ignored and treated like children, they would have a real voice among the stars. Behind him, Park Ji-woo fumbled with a stack of papers. The documents scattered across the floor as the shuttle shook slightly. "Oh no," she said in a worried voice. "I am so sorry, Ambassador Taman. I will pick them up right away." Taman turned and smiled at his assistant. Ji-woo was a small woman with nervous eyes and shaky hands. She had been assigned to help him with this mission, though he wondered why they had chosen someone who seemed so anxious all the time. She dropped things constantly and always looked like she was about to cry. "Do not worry about it," Taman said kindly. "We have copies of everything." Ji-woo crawled around on her hands and knees, gathering the scattered papers. Her thick glasses slipped down her nose as she worked. "I am just so nervous," she said. "What if I mess something up? What if the other species think humans are stupid because of me?" "They will not think that," Taman assured her. "You are doing fine." But as Ji-woo collected the papers, her eyes moved quickly around the shuttle. She noted the positions of the pilot and co-pilot. She memorized the location of every exit and emergency kit. Her fingers briefly touched a small device hidden in her jacket. To anyone watching, she looked like a clumsy woman picking up papers. In reality, she was mapping every detail of their surroundings. The shuttle docked with the station 20 minutes later. Taman straightened his formal diplomatic robes and checked his appearance one last time. These first meetings would be crucial for humanity's future. He had to make a good impression. "Remember," he told Ji-woo as they prepared to leave the shuttle, "we are representing all of humanity today. Let us show them that we are a peaceful and civilized species." Ji-woo nodded eagerly. "Yes, Ambassador. I will try not to embarrass us." The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Taman stepped through first, followed by Ji-woo, who immediately tripped over the threshold and nearly fell. A small group of alien beings waited to greet them in the docking bay. The leader was a tall, lizard-like creature with green scales and yellow eyes. She wore ornate robes that marked her as someone important. Behind her stood several other aliens of different species. Taman recognized some of them from his studies. "Welcome to Council Station Omega 7, the lizard woman said in perfect human language. "I am Speaker Cathara. We have been expecting you." Taman bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Speaker Cathara. I am Ambassador Lee Taman of Earth. This is my assistant, Park Ji-woo. We are honored to be here." Cathara's eyes flicked over Ji-woo with obvious disdain. The human woman was struggling to organize her papers again after dropping them during her stumble. She looked small and helpless next to the impressive alien delegates. "Yes," Cathara said slowly. "How interesting. Please follow me." As they walked through the station's corridors, Taman marveled at everything around him. The walls were made of some kind of smooth, glowing metal. Aliens of dozens of different species moved past them. Some looked like giant insects with multiple arms. Others were tall and thin like living crystals. A few floated through the air without legs at all. Ji-woo walked behind Taman, appearing to struggle with her heavy bag. She bumped into walls and had to stop several times to catch her breath. The alien escorts whispered among themselves, clearly amused by the clumsy human. "Is this really the best your species could send?" asked a tall insect-like being with 4 arms. "She seems barely capable of walking." Taman felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment. "Ji-woo is very capable," he said firmly. "She may seem nervous, but she is intelligent and hard-working." The insect being made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. "If you say so, human." What none of them noticed was how Ji-woo's seemingly clumsy movements let her touch every wall and surface they passed. Her nervous glances were actually careful observations of security cameras, guard positions, and potential weapons. When she bumped into a maintenance panel, her fingers quickly memorized its layout. Every stumble served a purpose. They arrived at a large circular chamber with a domed ceiling. Hundreds of seats were arranged in rising tiers around a central speaking area. Delegates from across the galaxy filled most of the seats. The noise of dozens of different languages created a constant buzz in the air. "This is the main council chamber," Cathara explained. "Your species has been granted observer status for now. If today's session goes well, you may eventually earn full membership. Taemin nodded eagerly. We understand. Humanity is grateful for this opportunity. They were led to a small section near the back of the chamber. The seats were clearly meant for less important visitors. Taemin did not mind. He was just happy to be there at all. As they sat down, Jiwoo dropped her bag again. The contents spilled everywhere, including what looked like children's snacks and a small stuffed animal. Several nearby aliens pointed and made sounds that were probably laughter. Oh no, Jiwoo said loudly. My lucky charm fell out. She scrambled to pick up the stuffed animal, a small gray elephant with one torn ear. A crystal-like being in the seat next to them shook its head. Humans bring toys to diplomatic meetings, it said to its companion. How childish. Taemin helped Jiwoo collect her things. It is okay, he whispered to her. Do not let them upset you. But Jiwoo was not upset. As she gathered her belongings, her trained eyes were cataloging every potential threat in the room. She counted security guards, noted the positions of all exits, and identified which aliens were carrying weapons. The stuffed elephant contained 3 different types of poison and a small explosive device, though no scanner would detect them. The session began with Speaker Kithara calling for order. Today we welcome a new species to our chambers, she announced. The humans of Earth wish to join our galactic community. The reaction was mixed. Some aliens clapped politely. Others made sounds of disapproval. A few simply ignored the announcement entirely. Taemin stood up when called upon. He walked to the central speaking area with confidence and pride. Behind him, Jiwoo remained in her seat, apparently trying to untangle her earphone wires. Honored delegates, Taemin began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. I come before you today not as a conqueror or a threat, but as a friend. Humanity seeks only peace and cooperation with all species. He spoke for 20 minutes about Earth's history, culture, and hopes for the future. He talked about human art, music, and literature. He described their scientific achievements and their dreams of exploring the stars alongside other intelligent beings. Many aliens listened with polite interest. A few even seemed genuinely impressed by humanity's accomplishments. But others whispered among themselves with obvious skepticism. When Taemin finished his speech, a large warlike alien stood up. This was Admiral Thex of the Hegemony faction, a group known for their aggressive expansion policies. These humans speak pretty words, Thex said in a booming voice. But what can they offer us? They have barely mastered space travel. Their technology is primitive. Their representative brings a servant who cannot even carry papers without dropping them. Laughter echoed through the chamber. Taemin felt his face grow hot with shame. In her seat, Jiwoo looked down at her lap as if she wanted to disappear. Furthermore, Thex continued, humans are clearly weak. Look at them. Small, soft, easily frightened. What use are such creatures to the galaxy? More aliens nodded in agreement. Taemin tried to respond, but his words seemed small and ineffective after Thex's booming declaration. As the session continued, it became clear that many delegates viewed humanity as a minor species at best. They were willing to let humans observe council proceedings, but few took them seriously as potential partners. Throughout it all, Jiwoo sat quietly in her seat. She occasionally dropped something or made a small noise of distress. To everyone watching, she was proof of human incompetence. They had no idea that behind her nervous exterior was one of the most dangerous individuals in the galaxy. The morning of the 5th day started like any other. Taemin woke early and reviewed his speech for the afternoon's important session. Today the council would vote on whether to grant humanity full membership status. He had worked for weeks preparing his presentation. Jiwoo helped him organize his materials while eating breakfast. She spilled orange juice on her shirt and had to change clothes, making them 15 minutes late for their first meeting. I'm sorry, Ambassador, she said as they hurried through the station corridors. I promise I will be more careful today. Do not worry about it, Taemin replied, though he seemed nervous. Today is too important to let small problems upset us. The first meeting was with a group of moderate delegates who had shown some interest in human membership. Taemin presented his arguments about the benefits of including humanity in the galactic community. The aliens listened politely but asked many difficult questions. What can your species contribute that we cannot already do ourselves? Asked a tall, blue-skinned delegate. How do we know you will not become aggressive once you have access to advanced technology? Asked another. Taemin answered as best he could, but he could see doubt in their eyes. Humanity was still viewed as primitive and potentially dangerous. During the meeting, Jiwoo sat in a corner chair, apparently struggling with a tangled headphone cord. She had been working on the same knot for 20 minutes, looking increasingly frustrated. What the aliens did not see was that her hands were positioned to quickly access 3 different concealed weapons hidden in her clothing. She had noticed unusual activity in the corridors outside. Security patrols had changed their patterns twice in the past hour. Maintenance workers were accessing panels they normally ignored. Most concerning of all, she had spotted at least 6 aliens who were clearly not station personnel, but were wearing worker uniforms. The meeting ended with polite but non-committal responses from the delegates. They would consider humanity's application, but they made no promises. As they walked to their next appointment, Da-un joined them in the corridor. She wore a bright smile and carried a bag full of cultural exchange materials. "Good morning, Ambassador Taemin," she said cheerfully. "How are the meetings going?" "Slowly," Taemin admitted. "But we are making progress." "That is good to hear," Da-un replied. As she spoke, her eyes met Jiwoo's for just a moment. Jiwoo gave an almost invisible nod toward a nearby maintenance panel. Taeyoon's expression did not change, but she adjusted the strap of her bag in a way that meant she understood. Both women had noticed the same things. The station's normal routines were being disrupted. Too many unknown faces were moving through areas they should not have access to. Something was definitely being planned. The afternoon session was held in the main council chamber. Hundreds of delegates filled the circular seating arrangement. Taemin would present humanity's final case for membership, followed by questions and a vote. As they took their seats in the observer section, Jiwoo dropped her bag again. This time, a small device rolled under the seat in front of them. She crawled after it, bumping into several alien delegates and apologizing repeatedly. "Clumsy humans," muttered an insect-like being. "They cannot even sit down without causing problems." While retrieving her device, Jiwoo was actually planting 3 tiny sensors under different seats. These would give her early warning if energy weapons were being charged nearby. She also used the opportunity to memorize the exact positions of every delegate who might pose a threat. Da-un entered the chamber a few minutes later and found a seat near the middle section. She appeared to be setting up recording equipment to document the historic session. In reality, she was assembling a disassembled sniper rifle that had been smuggled in as camera parts. Speaker Kethara called the session to order. "Today we will hear the final presentation from the human delegation, followed by our formal vote on their membership application." Taemin stood and walked to the central speaking platform. He looked confident and dignified in his formal robes. Behind him, Jiwoo remained in her seat, apparently trying to untangle her earphone wires again. "Honored delegates," Taemin began. "5 days ago I came before you as a stranger asking for your trust. Today I stand here as someone who has learned to respect and admire the diversity of this galactic community." He spoke passionately about humanity's desire to contribute to galactic civilization. He promised that humans would share their knowledge freely and work to promote peace between all species. His words were sincere and moving. Many delegates seemed genuinely impressed. Even some who had been skeptical before began nodding in agreement. It looked like the vote might actually go in humanity's favor. That was when Admiral Thex stood up. "Before we vote," Thex announced in his booming voice, "I believe this council should know some important information about these humans." Taemin looked confused. "What information, Admiral?" "Information about your species' true nature," Thex replied with a cold smile. "You speak of peace, but we have learned that humanity has a dark and violent history. You have spent thousands of years waging wars against your own kind." "That is true," Taemin admitted, "but we have learned from those mistakes. We have grown beyond our violent past." "Have you?" Thex asked. "Then why did you bring a military operative disguised as a diplomat's assistant?" A shocked silence fell over the chamber. Every eye turned toward Jiwoo, who looked up from her tangled earphones with an expression of complete confusion. "I do not understand," she said in a small, frightened voice. "I am just an assistant." "I carry papers and take notes," Thex laughed loudly. "Do you really expect us to believe that? Our intelligence sources have identified her as a trained killer. A special forces operative with dozens of confirmed kills." More shocked murmurs rippled through the chamber. Taemin stared at Jiwoo in disbelief. That cannot be true, he said. Jiwoo, tell them it is not true. Jiwoo's face had gone pale. She looked genuinely terrified, as if she was about to cry. I do not know what he is talking about, she whispered. I have never heard anyone in my life. Lies, Thex declared. This proves that humans cannot be trusted. They speak of peace while sending warriors in disguise. At that moment, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red as an automated voice announced, Alert, station security breach. All delegates, please remain in your seats while security forces respond to the threat. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted questions and demands for information. Some began moving toward the exits despite the announcement. What is happening? Taemin called out over the noise. Speaker Kethara was receiving urgent messages on her communication device. Her scaled face showed growing alarm as she read them. The station is under attack, she announced. Unknown hostile forces have breached our outer defenses. All council sessions are suspended until further notice. The alarms grew louder. Through the chamber's large windows, flashes of light could be seen in the space around the station. Ships were firing at each other in the darkness beyond. Who is attacking us? Someone shouted. Before anyone could answer, the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a few seconds later, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. The chamber's main doors slammed shut with a heavy metallic sound. We are trapped, Daeun said loudly, though she did not sound scared. If anything, she sounded ready for action. In her seat, Jiwoo was no longer fumbling with her earphones. Her hands moved with sudden precision as she accessed the hidden devices in her clothing. Her nervous expression had disappeared, replaced by the cold focus of a trained professional assessing threats. Ambassador, she said to Taemin, her voice completely different from before. I need you to get down on the floor now. What? Taemin stared at her in confusion. Jiwoo, what is wrong with your voice? Get down! Jiwoo shouted with commanding authority. At that moment, the chamber's side doors exploded inward. Armed figures in dark armor poured through the breaches, firing energy weapons at anything that moved. Delegates screamed and dove for cover as plasma bolts lit up the chamber. Taemin finally understood that Jiwoo had been hiding something important. As he dropped to the floor, he saw his clumsy assistant moving with impossible speed and grace. She had produced weapons from seemingly nowhere and was already returning fire at the attackers. Stay down and do not move, she told him in a voice that belonged to a soldier, not a nervous secretary. Across the chamber, Daeun had shed her own disguise. The cultural attaché was gone, replaced by someone who moved like a predator among prey. She had assembled her hidden weapon and was picking off attackers. With precise shots, the delegates who had spent days mocking human weakness were now watching in shock as the two women they had dismissed as harmless began systematically eliminating trained soldiers. Admiral, Thex had taken cover behind an overturned table. This is impossible, he shouted. Humans are weak. They are not warriors. Jiwoo heard him over the sound of weapons fire. She looked directly at him with eyes that held no trace of fear or uncertainty. You have no idea what humans are capable of, she said calmly, then put 3 plasma bolts through the armor of an attacker who was trying to flank her position. The real fight had finally begun. The transformation was complete. Jiwoo moved through the chaos like a deadly wind. Her clumsy stumbling was gone, replaced by fluid motions that seemed to defy physics. She rolled behind cover, came up firing, and eliminated 3 attackers before they could react. Taemin watched in shocked silence from his position on the floor. The woman he had known for months was gone. In her place was someone he did not recognize. Her nervous voice had become cold and precise. Her shaking hands now held weapons with deadly certainty. Jiwoo, he whispered. Who are you really? She did not answer immediately. She was too busy studying the tactical situation. 12 attackers had entered through the main breach. 6 more were trying to force their way through a secondary entrance. The emergency barriers were holding for now, but they would not last long. I am someone who is going to keep you alive, she finally replied. Stay down and follow my instructions exactly. Across the chamber, Daeun had taken position behind a fallen pillar. Her cultural attaché persona had vanished completely. She moved with the same deadly grace as Jiwoo, picking off targets with cold efficiency. The alien delegates huddled in terror as the 2 human women turned the council chamber into a battlefield. Energy bolts flew in all directions. The smell of burned metal and ozone filled the air. "This cannot be happening," Speaker Cathara said from her hiding place behind the speaker's podium. "Humans are not warriors. They are peaceful farmers and merchants." "Apparently not all of them," replied Zephlon Prime, who was crouched nearby. The crystal being watched Jiwoo with fascination rather than fear. "Look at how she moves. Those are not the actions of an amateur." Jiwoo had spotted a group of attackers trying to circle around her position. She grabbed a plasma grenade from her hidden arsenal and threw it with perfect timing. The explosion eliminated 4 enemies and created a barrier of debris that blocked their advance route. "Where did she learn to fight like that?" asked a purple-furred delegate. More importantly, added an insect-like being, "Where did she get those weapons?" "She was searched when she entered the station." Dayun answered that question by producing another impossible weapon from her equipment bag. She had somehow hidden a military-grade pulse rifle in what appeared to be camera gear. Admiral Thex watched the humans with growing alarm. His carefully planned attack was being disrupted by 2 people he had dismissed as harmless. This was not how things were supposed to go. "Focus fire on the humans," he shouted to his remaining troops. "They are the real threat." 6 attackers turned their weapons toward Jiwoo's position. She saw them coming and moved before they could fire. Her role took her behind a different piece of cover, while simultaneously putting her in position to flank their new positions. Taemin tried to follow her movement and lost sight of her for a moment. When he spotted her again, she was somehow behind the attackers. Her knife work was swift and silent. 3 enemies fell before the others realized their positions had been compromised. How did she get behind them so fast? Taemin wondered aloud. "Your assistant is full of surprises," said Zephlon Prime, who had crawled closer to Taemin during the fighting. "I begin to think your species is much more dangerous than you pretended." The battle continued for several more minutes. The attackers had superior numbers and heavy weapons, but they were facing opponents who fought with a skill level they had not expected. Every time they thought they had cornered one of the humans, their target would disappear and reappear somewhere else. Jiwoo used the chamber's architecture to her advantage. She knew exactly where every support beam, hidden passage, and maintenance access was located. Her seemingly clumsy exploration of the station over the past few days had actually been detailed reconnaissance. She vanished into a ventilation grate and emerged 30 seconds later, behind a group of enemies who thought they were in a safe position. Her plasma rifle spoke 3 times, and 3 more attackers fell. "She is using the station against us," one of the surviving attackers reported to Admiral Thex. "She knows every passage and hiding spot." "Impossible," Thex replied. "She has only been here for 5 days." But Jiwoo had spent those 5 days mapping every inch of their environment. Her clumsy bumping into walls and maintenance panels had actually been careful study of the station's layout. She knew it better than some of the people who worked there. Dayun was proving equally deadly in her own way. Her position gave her clear sight lines across most of the chamber. Her shots were precise and economical. She never wasted ammunition or revealed her location unnecessarily. The 2 women began working together without any apparent communication. When Jiwoo needed covering fire to move to a new position, Dayun provided it. When attackers tried to flank Dayun, Jiwoo eliminated them before they could complete their maneuver. "They are coordinating their actions," observed a mushroom-like delegate, "but I have not seen them exchange any signals." "They do not need signals," Zephlon Prime said with growing respect. "They think alike. They understand each other's tactics instinctively." The surviving attackers were beginning to panic. Their numerical advantage was disappearing rapidly, and they could not predict where the humans would strike next. Several tried to retreat through the entrances they had used to enter. Jiwoo had anticipated this. She had been herding them toward specific positions throughout the fight. When they tried to escape, they found their exit routes blocked by debris and disabled equipment. "We are trapped," one attacker reported to Thex. "Then fight harder," Thex commanded. "Kill those humans before they kill all of you." But it was too late for that. Dayun had worked her way around to a position where she could cover the main exit. Her rifle spoke steadily, eliminating anyone who tried to flee. Jiwoo moved through the remaining enemies like death itself. Her combat knife flashed in the emergency lighting. Her movements were too fast to follow clearly. One moment she was behind cover. The next she was among her enemies, and then they were falling. Taemin could not believe what he was seeing. The gentle, clumsy woman he had known was a trained killer of extraordinary skill. Every nervous stumble had been an act. Every dropped paper had been part of a deception. "How long have you been lying to me?" he asked when Jiwoo passed near his position during the fighting. "I was never lying about wanting to protect you," she replied while reloading her weapon. "Everything else was just incomplete information." The last few attackers made a desperate charge toward the speaker's platform, where many delegates were hiding. They planned to take hostages and force a standoff. Jiwoo saw them coming and moved to intercept. She emerged from cover directly in their path, her rifle already firing. The first two attackers went down immediately. The third managed to get close enough to strike at her with an energy blade. Taemin watched in horror as the blade swept toward Jiwoo's head. He was certain she would be killed. But at the last second, she ducked under the swing and came up inside her attacker's guard. Her knife found its target with surgical precision. The chamber fell silent except for the distant sounds of continued fighting elsewhere in the station. All the attackers who had entered the council chamber were dead or disabled. The alien delegates slowly emerged from their hiding places, staring at the two human women who had saved their lives. Jiwoo stood among the bodies of her enemies, checking each one to make sure they posed no further threat. Her movements were efficient and professional. There was no emotion in her face, no satisfaction or regret. She was simply completing a necessary task. Taeun was performing similar checks on her side of the chamber. Between them, they had eliminated more than 20 trained soldiers in less than 10 minutes. "This is impossible," Admiral Thex said, though his voice now held fear instead of anger. "Humans are not supposed to be capable of this." Jiwoo looked at him with cold eyes. "You underestimated us," she said simply. "That was your mistake." Speaker Cathara approached cautiously. "Who are you really?" she asked. "I am exactly who I said I was," Jiwoo replied. "I am Ambassador Taemin's assistant. I carry his papers and help with his work. I just happen to have some additional skills." Taemin finally understood the truth. "You are military," he said. "Special forces." "I was," Jiwoo admitted. "Now I am a diplomat's aide who used to be military." The station's communication system crackled to life. "Council chamber, this is station security. We are reading multiple hostile contacts in your sector. What is your status?" Dayun moved to the communication panel. "This is Cultural Attaché Yun. The council chamber is secure. All hostile contacts have been neutralized. Confirmed. Stand by for security team arrival." As they waited for help to arrive, the alien delegates continued staring at the two human women. Everything they thought they knew about humanity had been proven wrong in the span of a few minutes. "If these are your diplomats," Zephlon Prime said to Taemin, "what are your actual soldiers like?" Taemin looked at Jiwoo, who was calmly cleaning her weapons while keeping watch for additional threats. He realized he did not know the answer to that question, and perhaps that was exactly the point. The station security team arrived 20 minutes later, armed and ready for battle. They found the council chamber filled with dead attackers and very much alive alien delegates. The two human women sat calmly in their assigned seats as if nothing unusual had happened. "Where are the hostiles?" asked the security commander, a large reptilian being with advanced combat armor. "Eliminated," Daun replied simply, gesturing toward the bodies scattered around the chamber. The security commander stared at the scene in disbelief. His team had been preparing for a major assault to retake the chamber. Instead, they found the threat had already been neutralized by two small human females. "How many security personnel were involved in this operation?" he asked. "None," Jiwoo answered. "Just us." "That is impossible. We counted at least 25 attackers entering this sector." 27, Jiwoo corrected. "Dayun eliminated 11. I eliminated 16. The security commander looked around the chamber again, counting bodies. The numbers matched exactly. Two humans had killed 27 trained soldiers without losing a single delegate. Over the next few hours, the full scope of the attack became clear. Admiral Thex had been working with a radical faction that wanted to prevent human membership in the council. They believed that humanity posed a long-term threat to galactic stability and had planned to eliminate the human delegation during the membership vote. The attack had involved over 200 soldiers and multiple assault ships. Most of the station's security forces had been drawn away to fight the main assault, leaving the council chamber vulnerable to a smaller strike team. That smaller team had expected to find helpless diplomats and take them hostage. Instead, they had encountered two of humanity's most elite operatives. How did Earth know to send military protection? Speaker Kithara asked Taemin during the investigation. I did not know they had, Taemin replied honestly. I thought Jiwoo was really just an assistant. And Dayun? I believed she was a cultural attaché. I had no idea she was anything else. Kithara turned to the two women. How many of you are there? How many of what? Jiwoo asked innocently. Operatives, soldiers, whatever you want to call yourselves. Jiwoo and Dawoon exchanged a glance. We are cultural and administrative personnel, Dawoon said. We just happen to have diverse skill sets. That is not an answer. It is the only answer we can give, Jiwoo replied. The investigation revealed more disturbing information. Every human diplomatic mission to other worlds had included similar support staff. Cultural attachés, administrative assistants, technical advisors, and medical personnel who all seem to have unusual training for their supposed roles. Your entire diplomatic corps is military. Admiral Thex accused from his detention cell. Our diplomatic corps is exactly what we said it was, Taemin answered. We just believe in being prepared. Prepared for what? For people like you, Jiwoo said coldly. The station's security recordings were reviewed by Council intelligence analysts. The footage showed Jiwoo and Dayun fighting with skills that exceeded most military units in the galaxy. Their movements were faster than most species could achieve. Their tactical thinking was several steps ahead of their opponents. Look at this sequence, one analyst pointed out. The human female anticipates her enemy's movements before he even begins to make them. And here, said another, she uses a combat technique I have never seen before. Where did humans learn to fight like this? They have been fighting each other for thousands of years, Zephlon Prime observed. Perhaps they became very good at it. The council spent 3 days debating what to do with this new information. Some delegates argued that humanity's deception proved they could not be trusted. Others pointed out that the humans had used their skills to protect council members rather than attack them. They saved our lives, Speaker Kethera reminded the assembly. If they wanted to harm us, they had the perfect opportunity during the attack. But they lied about their capabilities, protested a crystal delegate. How can we trust a species that sends warriors disguised as diplomats? How can we not trust a species that sends their best warriors to protect their diplomats? Zephlon Prime countered. They clearly value peace enough to risk their most valuable people for it. During these debates, Taemin had long conversations with Jiwoo about her real identity and role. How long have you been in Special Forces? He asked. 12 years, she replied. I joined when I was 18. And how many missions like this have you been on? This is my 15th diplomatic protection assignment. Were the others like this one? Jiwoo was quiet for a moment. Most species try to test us eventually. Some try to intimidate our diplomats. Others try to attack them. A few try to kidnap them for information. And you stop them. We stop them, she confirmed. Why did Earth not tell me? Because your reactions needed to be genuine. If you had known about our training, you would have acted differently. The aliens would have suspected something. Taemin realized the logic was sound, but it still hurt to know he had been kept in the dark. Do you really think I am that bad at acting? Jiwoo smiled for the first time since dropping her disguise. Ambassador, you are many things. But you are not a good liar. That is actually one of your strengths. How so? Because when you speak about peace and cooperation, everyone can tell you really mean it. That sincerity is more valuable than any weapon. On the 4th day after the attack, the council reconvened to vote on humanity's membership application. The chamber had been repaired, but everyone remembered what had happened there. Taemin gave his final speech to a very different audience than before. The delegates no longer saw humans as weak or naive. They now understood that humanity was capable of devastating violence when threatened. I stand before you today not to hide our nature but to explain it, Taemin said. Yes, humans are capable of great violence. We have fought wars for thousands of years. We have developed weapons and tactics that some of you find disturbing. He paused and looked around the chamber. But we have also learned that violence alone cannot build civilizations. It cannot create art or music or literature. It cannot explore the stars or make friends among strangers. We choose diplomacy because we understand the cost of war. We send our best warriors to protect our diplomats because we value peace enough to fight for it. We do not hide our strength to deceive you. We control our strength to serve you. The chamber was completely silent as he finished his speech. Then Zephlon Prime began a slow, rhythmic sound that was the crystal equivalent of applause. Other species joined in with their own versions of approval. The vote was unanimous. Humanity was granted full membership in the Galactic Council. After the ceremony, many delegates approached Taimin to offer congratulations and express their newfound respect for humanity. The conversation was very different from their earlier meetings. "I apologize for underestimating your species," one delegate said. "We all did," added another. "You have taught us not to judge by appearances. Will all your diplomatic missions include similar protection?" asked a third. "All our diplomatic missions include whatever personnel we feel are necessary," Taimin replied diplomatically. Later that evening, as they prepared to leave the station, Jiwoo resumed her clumsy assistant act. She dropped her bag while boarding their shuttle and scattered papers across the deck. "Oh no," she said in her nervous voice. "I am so sorry, Ambassador. Let me pick these up." Taimin watched her crawl around collecting the papers with new eyes. He could see the act now that he knew what to look for. Her movements were still precisely controlled even when they appeared clumsy. "You do not have to pretend anymore," he told her. "Everyone knows what you really are, do they?" Jiwoo asked, still in character. "I am your assistant. I carry your papers and help with your work. Everything else is just additional skills that might occasionally prove useful." As their shuttle departed the station, Taimin reflected on what had happened. Humanity had gained membership in the Galactic Council, but at the cost of revealing their true nature. The galaxy now knew that humans were far more dangerous than they appeared. "Was this part of Earth's plan all along?" he asked Jiwoo. "What do you think?" she replied, giving him a small smile. "I think Earth sent its most peaceful diplomat protected by its most dangerous warrior, knowing that eventually we would face a test like this. And I think the galaxy needed to learn that humans can be trusted precisely because we are strong enough not to need trust." Jiwoo nodded approvingly. "You are learning, Ambassador." As their shuttle flew through hyperspace toward Earth, news of the attack and humanity's response spread throughout the galaxy. The story became legend remarkably quickly. The day the galaxy learned that human diplomats traveled with death as their companion, some species began treating human representatives with new respect. Others started planning more carefully before attempting to threaten or intimidate human interests. A few simply avoided contact with humans altogether, but all of them understood a simple truth. Humanity spoke softly because they carried very large sticks. And those who forgot that lesson might find themselves on the wrong end of those sticks. Back on Earth, military commanders reviewed the mission reports with satisfaction. The diplomatic protection program was working exactly as intended.